This is Standard Office Procedures, the podcast that helps professionals live and grow through culture, communication, and candor. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Standard Office Procedures. I am your host, Grace, and with me today is my dearest friend, Shannon. Say hi, Shannon.
Hi.
Hi. I'm trying to introduce you differently every episode.
Yes, I noticed that. I have been a producer, a soulmate, a dearest friend.
You were my co-host once.
A co-host.
I'm going to come up with little epithets like they did like in the Odyssey, how they called all the Greek characters like really intense things like sword wielder or like...
I would love to wield a sword.
You could wield a sword. So today we're talking about a topic that actually you and I know pretty intimately and that I get asked about a lot by people who are starting out in their careers. And it's how to start freelancing with no experience. So I know if you don't know where to start, this can seem really daunting, right? Like, I really want to freelance. How do I get started? It seems like there's a lot of information and a lot of steps. Shannon and I were just talking offline about how when she and I both have backgrounds in freelancing, and we just kind of figured it out. So it definitely is something that you can use Google for and figure it out. But we're going to kind of condense all of our knowledge into one
walk you through it.
Neat little package. So first, though, we're going to discuss kind of the pros and cons so that you guys know what you're getting into if you're considering making this transition. So yeah, let's get started.
Let's talk about freelancing.
So let's talk about what freelance jobs are and what it means to be a freelancer. So of course, if you're considering it, then you know that freelancing means that you essentially work for yourself. You take on the jobs that you want, you make your own hours, you set your own rates. You're an entirely independent little business. And freelancers kind of sometimes get confused with contractors because oftentimes contractors are freelancers, right? Yeah. If a company hires you to do something on like an ad hoc basis, for tax purposes, you're not a full-time employee, you're a contractor. And so the two words aren't quite interchangeable, but they can oftentimes be used synonymously.
Yeah, I think about if I use the term, freelancers and contractors are very similar. Right. I kind of think of them as a freelancer is definitely working a lot more independently and less likely to work on a contract time set basis. It's more on like a per project basis or kind of like an as needed thing. It's almost like, I think of it being a smaller scale thing, whereas like you could be a contractor for a company and work for them like full time.
Yes.
You know,
you could be a salaried contractor.
Yeah. And you're still technically not a full-time, like a W-2 employee. You're still a 1099. I guess now it's NEC.
Oh my gosh. Taxes. Yeah.
Because it used to be 1099 miscellaneous. Now it's 1099 NEC. You could be a 1099 employee, but have like a 3-6 month contract with that person, or it's like a standing, like no end in sight agreement. Right. Yeah. But then I think, like I said, freelancing in general, like, oh, I'm a freelancer, like, kind of think of it as being something on the side or working up to having your own business or I don't know. I guess there are people that are freelance full-time too. But
yeah. No, I'm glad that you said that because we're going to touch on that a little bit later, as you always do. I like that you always bring in points from later.
I don't really do a good job of studying this.
Job.
I don't usually like study hard for this before we come in to record.
We're winging it.
And then almost every single time I'm like, oh, I have this fun thing to add. And you're like, I know. We're going to talk about it later.
I like it. It's a smooth segue. No, but I think of freelancing and contracting as like when you're a freelancer, you're really your own boss, right? Like you have clients and you have people that you answer to when you take on projects, but you call the shots. You're deciding what projects you're going to take on. You can really have a lot of freedom when it's deciding due dates and stuff, to a degree. Whereas if you're a contractor, you're working for somebody else. Yeah. You still have some freedom, but it is slightly different. So we're going to focus today a lot more on freelancing than contracting. But I did want to make that distinction at the beginning. So freelancers, I think it seems like a really glamorous career a lot of times because you do have a lot of autonomy and freedom to kind of choose how and when you work and what jobs you take. And especially for those of us who maybe you're in like a 9-to-5 grind and you're really kind of like, dude, I'm burned out. I wish I had more free time. I wish I had more flexibility. I think freelancing can seem like this ideal. But there is a flip side of that coin because it can be, right? But there is a flip side of that coin that freedom comes with an increased responsibility, which requires a lot of self-discipline and includes things like acquiring new business. So getting new clients, which is honestly kind of sometimes the most difficult part, maintaining these clients, working out your pricing and making sure it's, enough to sustain you while paying your taxes. That's another big thing when you're a freelancer is no longer do your taxes automatically come out of your paycheck every month or every, 2 weeks or whatever. You now have to set aside money to pay your taxes.
A lot of money.
A lot of money to pay them either, whatever, quarterly or annually or however you do it. But that's a new kind of thing for a lot of freelancers. And invoicing. So you've got to figure out how you're going to get paid by your clients. There are a lot of memes. There's a big sort of trope about if you're a freelancer, getting clients to pay you
pay me.
It can be a job in itself. Like that will take up a lot of your time. So I'm not trying to scare you off. Like I said, Shannon and I both have freelanced. I really enjoyed it. I'm not doing it anymore, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, there are things about freelancing that I absolutely loved, and it's all the shiny things that you could imagine, like working on all kinds of different projects and, getting to kind of do things at my own pace and things like that. But the flip side of that, again, is the handling the business side of things, which I absolutely hated. It was like, okay, I can do this at first, but as the freelancing racked up and it became more and more hours of my week, it was exhausting, and chasing down clients and working with people is really hard, especially when you're younger and you're first starting out, because it's tough to navigate all those waters when you don't have experience with, like, every conversation you're having with a client is the first time you're having that kind of conversation, and it can be a huge headache. It can be a huge headache. But again, I think a lot of that also wasn't, and we'll probably talk about this later. I don't really know what's okay. Obviously, I did not prepare.
You're doing a great job.
But, I think that's something that, now with more experience behind me and being a little older, I would know better to stand up for myself, not take things so personally.
Value yourself accurately.
And to prioritize certain things over other things. Where again, like when I was younger or first starting out freelancing, that was very hard for me. And I think it made it more stressful for me to do freelancing. Whereas now, if I had the time and wanted to freelance, I think I would do a lot better job at that stuff.
100%. No, I think that's a really good point. And again, we will touch on that later. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And Shannon and I, again, were just talking a minute ago before we started recording. We were kind of reminiscing about freelancing jobs and the sort of faux pas that we made on our own. And I was telling her about a job that I used to do. This is going to sound ridiculous, but I used to be a birthday party princess. So I would dress up as princesses and go to kids' birthday parties. And I remember at the time, I was very young. I remember at the time, I thought that my rates were just astronomical, right? Because when you have very little money, a little money seems like a lot of money. And so I had a lot of like front costs to buy like the costumes and to buy like the treats and toys for the girls and all this stuff. And I was charging $100 for about 4 hours of work, but you subtract the $50 that it costs. So I was charging $50 for 4. That's terrible. And I thought it was like highway robbery. So that is to say that inexperience can kind of hurt you. So let's talk about how to get ahead of that kind of, if you're younger or this is, new, we'll talk about that. So first, we're going to cover the pros and cons of freelancing. We've kind of shared anecdotally our experience, but I want to give you guys like a holistic view of what to expect. So some of the pros are that you can definitely work from home or while traveling. If you really love to travel and you're just like, some people, we've got one of our contract writers, Jordan. Hey, Jordan, I love you.
Hi, Jordan.
She actually wrote this blog post. She travels a lot, and that's why she is a freelance writer, is because she wants to travel a lot, and she'll go for like month-long stays, I think, at different places. And so she really enjoys that flexibility. Creating your own schedule, obviously, deciding your own workload. What can I take on? Am I in a season of life where I can take on a lot of work? Or maybe I need to like pare it down a bit. You have flexibility to work around other people's schedules. So maybe if you have, a partner or children, you have that flexibility to still be present and kind of decide your own schedule. You can choose the rate that you charge your clients. Again, that can be kind of a loaded situation, but you do get to set your own pricing. You have no commute. That one's fun. Especially if you live in an area where they're like, especially I think of like big cities.
High price of living places.
Yeah, high price of living places where I used to live in the greater Boston area and people would commute 2 hours each way. And I was like, that is insane. So if you're sick of your commute, this is a good option. Fewer meetings, so you have less kind of time that's just slipping through your fingers. And you get the luxury of deciding who you want to work with, right? So if somebody really rubs you the wrong way, you have the freedom to say, you know what, I do not want to work with you, and that is perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, I wish that I had known that was an option when I first started freelancing.
Me too. I was people-pleasing.
Like people that didn't treat me well, not even necessarily like working with them was okay, but they really like abused our agreement.
Yes.
Or, it was just endless revisions, or they would refuse to pay me, or they gave me some crap about paying my rates, which were very low.
Very low, sure.
I wish that I had known that it was fine for me to say,
I do not want to work with you.
No, thank you.
Yeah. And that's a good segue, because the cons of freelancing are just everything that Shannon described. So the biggest one for a lot of people is that there's less stability, right? You have no set contract, you have no salary, money. You don't know how much money you're going to bring in every month. I mean, it's nice to have repeat clients, and you can obviously create contracts, but that's usually further down the line. But generally it's a little less stable than a traditional job. You've got no paid vacation, which, I mean, I feel like you could just take vacation whenever you want. So that's kind of a double-edged sword. But
well, it's like if you need to take maternity leave, or if you need to take time off and be with your family or things like that, like
where's the
if
money
you
gonna
have
come
not
from?
saved money to pay yourself while you're out, then
how are you going to eat? Yeah. You are also obviously responsible for finding and managing your clients, which again takes up a lot more time than I think most freelancers realize. I want to be clear that like when you freelance, half of your job is actually working and the other half is managing, right? Mm-hmm. It's finding clients, it's writing invoices, it's marketing yourself, it's all these things. So just to kind of be open about it, you know, if you have this kind of glamorized idea in your head where it's like, I'll be working from my desk all day just doing this thing that I love, whether it's copywriting or graphic design or whatever it is, you'll be doing that sometimes, but a lot of it, maybe the same amount likely will be managing.
Right.
You won't have a team, which can be kind of rough for me, especially because I love to be around people, and it can be tricky to be solo. And there are things that you can do to mitigate that, but that is something to go in aware of. And you lack the support of kind of a direct manager or boss or mentor, which again, I was very young, just like Shannon when I freelanced. And so I really could have used that. I think I kind of did it in the wrong order. Because I had no idea what I was doing, and I had nobody to tell me how to do it, right? I had resources.
Spent a lot of time on the how design forums when I was starting out, like in the early 2000s. And that was just, I didn't even really post anything. I just read other people's posts and how do I handle this and what do I do? And I was like, oh man, I really don't know what I'm doing. But that was very useful.
Yeah. And then we'll talk about that too, about how there are ways to find resources if you're freelancing. Right. So don't be scared off by that. Again, we mentioned it before, you need to calculate your own taxes, and that is tricky for a lot of people because you might get that first check and think, wow, like, you know, Justine, our coworker, called it a comma check. Have you ever heard that?
Yes.
I've never heard that.
No, I've never heard that. I heard her say that though.
Yeah, my first comma check, right? So it's your first like $1,000 or over, but you get that first check and you're like, wow, this is a lot of money. And you have to remember that you have to set aside like a quarter or a third of it. And that's probably over, but a chunk of it to pay your taxes. Like
when I was freelancing, I was setting aside 30%.
I would do 30% too. Yeah, I'd always set up
to make
over.
Sure there was enough.
And then, you know, you have a little extra and you're like, okay, this is now whatever. But yeah, it's not all just free money that you get to spend because then you will get audited and get in trouble. And then this is one for mostly our US listeners, is that you have no health care. So, you know, obviously if you have a spouse or you're young and you're still on your parents' health care, then this is a little more viable. But if you're an adult or if maybe you have dependents, that's a big thing to think about.
Yeah, you don't have company provided health care.
No company provided health care, and you're going to have to figure. Obviously, there are ways to get of course, contractor health care, freelancer health care, and that's true. But that is also going to cost money, so that's going to up that percentage that you have to set aside. So again, I don't want to scare you off. There are a lot of wonderful things, but just to kind of give a holistic view of what you're kind of entering into.
I think it can sound very glamorous, like, you know, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to freelance, and I have these clients and I'm all set up. And I think particularly
words are hard.
That's hard. For younger people starting out, and not necessarily, I don't mean to harp on younger people, just people with less experience.
Right.
When you're starting out and you forget, you know?
Yeah.
You forget. I think that's why, like, when we have a baby,
oh my God,
they come out and they're so cute, and that's on purpose to make you forget.
Biology is
how hard it was to have it.
Tricky lady.
It's the same thing, right? So like, it's tough, but it's absolutely doable. Mm-hmm. You just need to understand that you're not going to just be sitting and drawing all day, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think that's it. And so just like Shannon said, I loved freelancing. I will probably freelance again at some season of my life.
I am sure that I will.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I really enjoyed it, and there's a lot of wonderful things, and I'm looking forward to doing it older, you know, like with more experience. So I know to, like we were saying before, set fair rates for myself. And now that I have more self-discipline and more gumption, to be quite honest, I'm less of a doormat. Like, I'm looking forward to it. So I want to say, just like you said, like this, I'm not trying to make it sound scary. I just want you to, I'm telling you the things that I wish I had known.
Exactly.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Exactly.
So now that we've kind of covered what to expect, and just giving you guys like all the information to make the right decision, let's talk about what kind of jobs you can do to freelance. So maybe, you know, some of us, like Shannon, you're a designer, I'm a writer. Like, we have our things, and I was always going to freelance write. Maybe though you're not sure what you want to do, you just know that you want to freelance. You like the lifestyle and you really want to try to get into it. Here's some options that you can sort of, if you pick one of these and kind of go into this niche.
Pretty common freelance positions.
There are obviously more beyond these. That's a good point, Shannon. These are the ones that are, I think, the most common that you can learn these skills online and kind of at your own pace.
And then I think people are often ready to hire for these types of positions.
Yes. So content writing is a big one, is maybe the top freelancing one. It's tricky because it's very competitive, but it is a very good option. SEO, we do a lot of that. That's search engine optimization. So that's kind of marketing stuff that kind of goes hand in hand with content writing a lot of the time. Copy editing and proofreading. So again, maybe you're not going to write the stuff, you're just going to edit it. That one is... I've done a lot of that. I like it a lot.
There's a lot of writing jobs for things like writing resumes or editing product descriptions, like things like that. I mean, so not even creative writing so much as hard, like more technical type writing. There's
technical writing
that.
pays a lot better. Creative writing, oh my gosh, sweet babies. Like I'm still trying to get paid for creative writing. And I mean, I said it like I'm the be all end all, but it's tough. I've been doing it for like 15 years now, and that's very hard. Not that it's not doable. I'm sure it is, but technical writing is where there's money. So if you want consistent money, I would look into that. And we'll talk more about resources for how to get better and where to go to find those jobs in a minute. But website and graphic design, those are, two other options. Again, I could never do it. Couldn't be me. But website design, if you have knowledge of coding or if you've got a good eye, UX, UI, that kind of stuff, that could be an option. Graphic design, that eludes me. That's Shannon. You're a really good graphic designer.
Design is, a huge freelance business because a lot of people don't have enough work in-house to hire a graphic designer, or particularly like small businesses, they know they need a graphic design support person, but they don't have enough work to support a full-time position.
Right.
So graphic design, graphic design and website design was my bread and butter for forever and ever and ever. And there's a lot of work in that. And there's a lot of different types of graphic design. So, if you're thinking graphic design, you're thinking one specific thing in your head, I guarantee you there's like 17 more ways to do it.
And we're going to talk about this again in a moment, but I do want to say that like niches exist.
Yes.
And so if you're very knowledgeable about a subject, like maybe you're very knowledgeable about baking, and you also like graphic design, like go after that kind of stuff. And again, we'll touch on that, but if you have a little bit of knowledge of one thing, but a lot of knowledge in another, there are ways to make all of that work together.
Well, there's different types. This applies to all of these, but there's graphic design, like everything. Then there's like 2D design. Yes. There's 3D design. There's layout design, which is like laying out publications and magazines and books. Or there's like, print design, or there's web design, like advertising designs, like web ads, things like that. There's animation. There's all kinds of different things, right?
Yeah. So find your thing, but we'll get to that in a minute. Social media specialist. So this is one that I'm glad is getting more sort of respected as a real position. Like Shannon was saying, a lot of times companies don't have enough resources to hire a full-time social media manager, but they understand that they need somebody to manage their social media. So this is a great one if you're comfortable on social media platforms. Brand development, that's a bit more of a dense one.
I've done a lot of that as well. Yeah. That was something that after I had design for a while, I realized that I had like some other skills, and I started working in brand development, and my career really kind of exploded in a combination of my day job and my freelance job because I had all this experience working with brands and helping them like bring their vision to life, right? So a lot of times brand development kind of goes hand in hand with design work because of that.
And can often go hand in hand with content writing, right? Because you're like it's voice and communication. Public relations, I don't know much about this one, but I know it can be done remotely. Customer support, this is a great one. I did this for a long time. I would answer customer emails and just kind of be like the customer service person for this independent company that was in like Idaho or something, and I lived in Alabama. So that was fun. I like that. Data entry, this one's, pretty straightforward. Just data entry. It's not the most like creative job of all time, but you can get paid for it. Transcription, that's a great one.
I did that in college.
I did too. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it.
It was interesting.
Tutoring, this one's everything,
Excellent.
right? This is whatever you want to do.
And I think very popular right now, given everybody's kind of wild schedules with the pandemic. I think tutoring positions have really exploded.
Yeah, and you can tutor remotely.
Yeah.
Computer programming, this one, again, I have no knowledge of it, but computer programming and app development and game development, those are all very sought after skills that you can do as a freelancer. Video editing, That's a great one. Video or audio or podcast editing, especially now that everyone and their mom has a podcast. There's nothing more appealing to me as somebody who has very little kind of technical editing skills than I want to make so many. I always have ideas for like, I'll make this podcast, but I don't want to edit it. And I would love to just give all the files to somebody and say, edit this for me. So that's a very good avenue. Animation, like Shannon was saying a moment ago. Voice acting. I've actually looked into this before, not for me, but for a friend. Yeah. For Ori, my kid's dad. He has a very nice voice. And I was always like, you could be a very good voice actor. Legal services, couldn't be me. Don't know what you have to do to be qualified for this, but there you go. Being an accountant. So again, you might have to have a CPA. You might just be like a bookkeeper, right? So if you're good with money and you have some background with that, or it's just something that you've always done, right? I know a lot of my friends fastidiously like balance checkbooks and they started to freelance as bookkeepers for businesses. That's a great skill. And then virtual assistant, which is exactly what it sounds like.
Whole world out there.
Yeah, and that's a massive market, just like you said. So those are just some options. There are obviously other ones out there, but if any of those kind of perked your ears up, you could look into that. All right. So let's start talking about kind of the meat of this podcast, which is how to start freelancing when you have no experience. So you've picked your field, you know what you want to do, you're ready to make the jump. So how do you start? Some of this stuff is going to be kind of a bummer, but just bear with me because you're going to have to improve your skills and you're going to have work samples. And that might consist of doing work for free. And I know we don't want to do it and we don't want to hear it, but sometimes you just got to, bite the bullet. Yeah. I had to do it. I would write, and sometimes, so when I started, I had to create a portfolio, right? Especially if you're going after these jobs that are more creative. If you're a designer, you're a writer, you're a programmer, whatever it is, you have to create a portfolio of your work. Yeah, to show what you're capable of. And so I did a lot of writing for fake brands. And I didn't, lie and say like, these are real people that I've worked for. I just gave them the sample. And again, that took time. Like that takes discipline to sit and write something that probably isn't very fun, but is reflective of your abilities. And when you do that, this is just a tip. It can be very tempting to get somebody to edit it and fix it and make it sound better. But I've hired writers who have done that and I will not hire them again and I will not recommend them to people. So if you are a writer or designer and you are trying to showcase your ability honestly,
show your work.
Yes.
Be honest about your work. And maybe it's not the most amazing thing in the world. That is okay.
That's fine.
But what you don't want to do is misrepresent your skill level because they will see right through that the first time you turn something in.
Exactly. And in the world of freelancing, like clients talk. And I mean, it's if you kind of burn a couple bridges by misrepresenting your work and giving somebody a bad taste about you, it can be difficult to overcome that in the future and you might hurt yourself. So I would just say like, as you build your portfolio, make sure you're accurately representing your abilities.
Absolutely.
But this is key, right? So, and if you're like, I don't know where to start or I don't have anything, think about if you went to college, right? You probably wrote papers or you probably wrote some kind of dummy copy or I'm doing this from a very writing lens because that was my experience, but I'm sure you've done projects that could translate. And so you can do that.
Yeah. I mean, if I wanted to, design is really my, forte.
Sure.
But say I wanted to start like bookkeeping on the side. I'm not a bookkeeper, but I was the treasurer for my kids' school and I had really neat ledgers that I put together, and I have examples of the work that I did and I could write about them and some bullet points of like, this is what I did. I managed X amount of money. I helped out with things at like our community pool and things like that, and I manage our own budget, our own family budget. I took it over for my husband and I set up a whole new system. I mean, that is perfectly valid.
Yes.
If I knew somebody, if I wanted to like maybe help somebody else with their family budget, I could be like, well, look, this is what I did with mine. I'd be happy to help you with yours.
And that's a great point too, Shannon, is that I talked about, creating new samples or going back to like academic samples, but also passion projects. Yeah. Those count. We had a person apply for a job and she ran a social media account and she didn't mention it, right? She didn't really lead with that. Like she was talking about, she was applying for a marketing position and the account was a personal account that she kind of tucked in at the end there. And I remember looking at it after she left and thinking like, this was very relevant. Like you have a lot of followers here. This shows an awareness of consistency. Like that was a relevant thing. For me, when I applied to this job that I have now at Blue Summit Supplies, I listed my personal blog as an example of, a project that I had worked on because it was at that point a copywriting position. And I gave a lot of professional samples, but I also was like, this is another thing that I've done, right? Which at the time, our CEO, Owen, was like, I really like that you did that,
well,
right?
And we liked the personality. We were really hoping to find somebody that could bring some fun into our brand voice. And so that was extremely relevant.
Yes. So look at what you've done in your personal life too, and take inventory of that and think, is this relevant? And you know, like Shannon said, even if it is something like the bookkeeping example is great. If you have created a whole system for your own money, that is relevant experience. That shouldn't be maybe your only experience,
right?
But it is relevant.
It's worth including if you have nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. Another thing you could do is to donate your time and talents to an organization that maybe you're excited about or passionate about, because that way it's, yes, you're doing free work, but it is a donation, which kind of gives it that like altruistic bent. I did this for the Huntsville Metro Animal Shelter when I was starting out. I did an internship there, and it was unpaid. And I have a lot of feelings about unpaid internships. I think they are evil. But I will say that outside of the scope of my internship, I also donated my skills to creating their social media presence because I was happy to do it and I was excited to do it, and that went into my portfolio. So
absolutely. I think working with nonprofits and working for cheap or free, right? You can say, well, this is my nonprofit rate. Maybe it's your regular rate. It's just really cheap, you know? Yeah. I did a lot of that when I was starting out. And I also looked for every opportunity with friends and family to offer my services. Like, well, hey, would you like me to lay that out for you? Like that's the smart. Church bulletin. Like, well, I'll just do a nice, cute little logo for the front. That was lovely, you know, or the pool was like, well, that logo is from 1972. Would you like me to do a new one? And I did, you know, and that was just free on my own time. But that kind of stuff really built up my portfolio of work for real businesses. Yes.
And that is a great point, is that if you create, like I was saying, I had dummy copy, right, for businesses that didn't exist. That's fine. If you can show that a real business is using your logo, that is more impressive. We don't know. Like hiring people don't know that you did it for free.
Yeah. Don't give your work away to free for companies that could pay you.
Right.
But giving your time to a cause that you care about or to family and friends or causes they care about, I think that is a very worthy use of your time and theirs.
Especially as you're starting out to build up that portfolio. And so the next step for starting that career, if you're brand spanking new, is to remember that you are your own branding and marketing person. And I'm not saying you have to be a pro marketer, but there are some things that need to be aware of. So updating your social media profiles. And I don't mean necessarily like across the board, but LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn, I know a lot of younger people don't, have LinkedIn, or it seems dated or whatever. It is useful. I use it, and I think of myself as like in the middle. I'm 29, and when we're hiring new people, like I still look at LinkedIn. I know a lot of businesses, there's a lot of presences on there. I look for contractors on there. I check there when I'm looking to hire somebody. When I need a new writer to add to the team, I'll go through LinkedIn first. So there is a benefit to looking on LinkedIn. Shannon is the best internet sleuth, and I feel like you always check LinkedIn.
I always check LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'm always interested to look at people on LinkedIn and see if there are connections or see what kind of job history they have, because it's interesting. Sometimes people will put things on LinkedIn that are not on their resume, and I think that's really interesting. And again, like I've always listed things on my LinkedIn. I've had people find me as a freelancer through LinkedIn, through places that I have listed on my site, right? And they're like, oh, well, that's a reputable place. So like, would you freelance for me? And so that is really useful.
Yeah. And making sure you update kind of like your, the little profile bio, the words that you could write to describe yourself in your LinkedIn profile. We look at those. People look at those, so make sure that it's up to date and that it's accurate and that it's professional. I'm not saying it has to be totally stuffy and boring. I don't think mine is, but to be fair, I've not looked for a new job in a long time, so I don't really care.
You better not
I think mine says, it's a quote from Owen, and it says, "You are a very strange cookie." I think so don't do what I did. But I will say, just make sure it's up to date and it's professional, and it's representative of what you can do and kind of your personality and who you are.
Fill in all the pieces, add words, because if you put it on there and you don't have any description in there, it's not. Take the time to fill it in.
When I find someone's LinkedIn profile and they're looking for a job and they're using LinkedIn and they haven't done anything, I'm like, this tells me something about your seriousness.
Exactly.
In your job. So that's a good tip. But also beyond LinkedIn, just be aware of kind of what's out there about you, especially if you have a kind of unusual name. I'm speaking from experience, because for a while when you Googled my name, a lot of stuff would show up that I was like, oh, I don't know if I want that to show up. And so what I did was I gamed the SEO and I flooded it and I pushed all that stuff that I really didn't want to show up on the first page of Google down.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit more of an intense trick. That's an SEO trick.
I'm going to have some questions about that after the podcast.
We'll talk about it offline. But I'm just saying that you do need to be cognizant of kind of like your online presence because that is everything right now.
Well, and on your social media profiles, right? So like if you don't have a separate profile for your business or if you're using your full name in your social media profiles and they're open to the public, check what's open to the public, right? Not saying you have to change who you are online.
No.
I mean, I think if you're trying to be in business, you need to be aware of what's online, whether it's private or not. However, if you're somebody who tweets about a lot of stuff, maybe politically, or, you post a lot of pictures of somewhat controversial things, when you're trying to get new clients, lock it down. Just put it on private.
Yeah, just be careful.
Be aware.
I used to do a lot of like inappropriate thirst tweets and I had to change up my game because my name was on there. And I didn't really, here's the thing, like my handle wasn't my full name. I'm not a fool, but somehow, I think it was like linked to my phone or something, my full name was connected to the account. So when you Googled it, it still pulled it up. And I was like in a panic because I was like, I need people to not see how many weird things I tweeted about Sebastian Stan. So there was a lot. And Mads Mikkelsen. But yeah, so just be cognizant of it. Again, like Shannon said, I'm not saying change who you are, but just think of it like a prospective client will maybe see this. Will this help me get the job?
When they Google your name, what comes up and what are they going to see? And is that something you want a professional person to be looking at?
Yes. And I'm glad that you brought up the separate account thing because social media, especially as a freelancer, it might be your biggest marketing tool, right? Especially as a graphic designer or something more visual like that. If you're doing or audio, right? If you're editing podcast clips or you're editing video clips, with the permission of your clients, you can build up kind of a portfolio and a presence there. So that way when people look you up, they can see all of your stuff in one place. So, I mean, you make sure, this is a flip side. This is not about like cleaning your social media, but this is about utilizing it. To the best of kind of your ability. I know when we look for contracting or businesses to contract with, like Armosa as our videography studio, their social media presence is beautiful.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so good.
Well, and this is interesting too. So, I mean, even if you're not on the creative side, right? Maybe you're an accountant or something like that. So I think this is a whole other podcast, but Grace and I specialize in content creation.
Yes.
So the idea is figure out who is your audience and what kind of things are going to be interesting to them, right? So if I'm somebody who's trying to get into bookkeeping, maybe I have this really great like Twitter account or Facebook account where I share like relevant news and tips and things like that. It's not something that has to take up your whole life, but if you have something there and it shows that like you're posting regularly and it's relevant content and it's like, oh, this person kind of knows what they're talking about. This is interesting. I think that's a really good look.
And this, I will say, like this will set you apart from other newbies to the game, right? Like these are things that are kind of extra that other people aren't doing, most likely. So if you're very new to freelancing, this is really good advice. Like this will set you apart and make you look like you've been doing it for longer, right? That this is, I wish I had known this. Next tip is to pick a niche or specialty. So kind of like we said before, you can be a copywriter or a graphic designer that just works with everybody. That's totally fine. A lot of us have done that in the past. But you may find that either intentionally or accidentally, you kind of fall into a niche. I know for a while there, I ended up writing copy for a lot of independent video game creators. They wanted me to write their video game scripts. And it happened because of word of mouth, right? Like I did it for one person. They were like, oh, my friend is also doing it. Oh, on this forum, I saw that you did it for this guy. And that can kind of happen. So, and that's fine. That's great, especially if it's a niche where there's a lot of business to be had. And Shannon, I'm sure you've had similar experience with design where it's like.
Absolutely. I mean, I worked out where I had a specific set that I was really good at, like a certain type of graphics. And that was what was in my portfolio. And that is what I sold to people, right? And, or it's really helpful to say you work in social media, right? You can come up, this is a package. And I have examples. I work with small businesses of this size. If you're looking to reach this kind of audience, I will do X posts a week with X graphics. And then you have like a package, you're done, right? It's not saying that like I can do all of these other things and I can do video and I can do web design and I can do podcasting and I can do all this. Like pick a niche and run with it. And I think that's really important even for these like more technical skills like bookkeeping. Maybe you work really well with small nonprofits.
Exactly.
You work really well with churches. You work really well with like
healthcare was a big one.
Healthcare departments.
Is a big
exactly,
one.
Right?
These are businesses that have, I mean, again, like the ideal for me was like, I want to write copy for, I don't know, I want to do it for like fun, cute businesses. I love writing product descriptions and I did that for
magazine.
a bit. Things like that. Yeah, seriously though, Poise. Is that from a...
Yes.
Okay.
It's from
30, 40, 5, what's it? 13 going on 30.
13 going on 30.
Nailed it. Anyway, but I did. I was like, I'm going to write fun, girly copy, and it's going to be so cute and fun. And I did that a little bit, but guess what? Small businesses don't have a ton of money to pay you. And the frank reality is a lot of these freelancing skills, there's a lot of people out there trying to do it, and they're going to go with the cheapest option generally when they're smaller businesses or the more fun kind of copy to write, or I'm saying copy, the more fun work to do. However, there are big juggernauts in these in the world that have a lot of budget, like banks and hospitals and things like that. And so I ended up becoming kind of accidentally niched in finance writing. Yeah. Let me tell you, that is boring, but it paid my bills.
But it'll pay the bills, and that can give you the cushion that you need to be able to do the more fun stuff.
Exactly. So again, I'm just saying, not trying to scare you off, but being sort of aware that I might have to do some work that isn't my favorite to pay those bills so I can do the fun work and have all the perks of freelancing. All right. So how do you find jobs? This is the question. This one was, I think, the most frustrating part for me and the most difficult part when I was starting out. Eventually, I will say, when you have developed a good kind of client base, you will start getting jobs based on referral. Or you can ask for referrals. You can say, hey, can you refer me your friends? And that is, or your, colleagues, and that works well. But it does take some time to get there.
It takes time. Yes. I mean, people will start to know you and they will start to recommend you, but that does take a while.
Yes. And getting testimonials and things like that, those always help. But again, that's later. So to start off, one thing that I did as a copywriter was I did start off using these platforms like Upwork and Fiverr. And these are freelancing platforms that connect freelancers with businesses or individuals looking for that service. So for example, if Grace, I'm starting a new podcast and I need a graphic design. I need some graphic design work.
Please. Graphic design is my passion.
May I have a graphic design? Anyway, I need some design work done. I will go on Upwork. I see Shannon's profile. I say, oh, this looks great. I see her portfolio. I hire Shannon through Upwork and we work together and it's amazing. But do be aware that these services, they will take a small percentage of the payment. So, you can list your rate on there, and I would list it a little bit higher, maybe just a little bit. So that way that will cover the cost of the rate.
Add a few bucks, yeah.
Add a few dollarinos. But I think it's good. It's a really kind of good, easy way to not have to worry too much about finding clients and digging around and doing a ton of work trying to get your, connect with people. There are also ways that you can pay to kind of sponsor yourself. So that way you show up first in the search results. So you can kind of throw some money behind it there. But there's some pros and cons there. What do you think?
Yeah, I never used any of those programs. I never used any of them. I think that they work really well. I also think that is another case where it's very helpful to have a niche. So when somebody goes on there and they're searching for resume editor for healthcare field, so specific, those kind of things can come up if you specialize in those. I think that's really useful.
That's a great point, because if I went on there and I just listed myself as copywriter, there's a million. Yeah. And I can put money behind it all I want and say, I want to show up in the top search results. Yep. So have 1,100 other people, right? So, but Shannon's totally right. If I say copywriter specializing in finance, that narrows it down a bit.
Think this is a good lesson in SEO and search engine optimization. So think about things like, if I want to buy something handmade, I want to go on Etsy and I want to find the perfect gift for my husband, and I search gifts for men. I'm going to get all kinds of stuff. But if I search for Star Wars coffee cup for dads.
Are you thinking about Nathan?
No, I was just kind of, I don't know, maybe.
I like it.
But I'm going to get something much more specific, right?
Yes.
So think about that. Instead of putting yourself as copywriter, designer for the people, don't put that on there. You can put in there small business web ad designer, that kind of thing. Just be more specific, and people are a lot more likely to find you.
Set yourself apart. So you said you didn't use these programs. How did you find clients when you started out?
I asked people.
Really?
I literally went to people that I knew that worked at businesses. I asked my hairdresser, I asked the church, I asked the pool. And then once I did work for those people, it was a lot of little network marketing, but just on my own, right? And then somebody would be like, hey, make sure you tell your friends that I do freelance graphic design if you know of anything. And people started to funneling people my way, and it became a really big word of mouth. And then I also made a connection with a much more established woman in town who was a web designer, or she was actually a designer. She didn't do web design, right? So she had always done traditional graphic design, and I was getting into web design. And so she hired me to work for her to help create websites for clients, right?
Yeah.
So she would do the design. I would take it and turn it into a website. And then I got a lot of clients off of those people, right? And so it was very word of mouth, and it was very much me telling everybody, well, tell your friends, tell your friends, tell your friends. Like,
I love that, because I don't think of you as somebody who like loves to talk to a bajillion people.
oh no, I hated it. It was
But that's
awful.
what I'm saying. But you did it, and it was effective.
I did it. Well, and I did it on a way that worked for me, right? Like I told people, and I did fun stuff. Like I made cool, I made a little logo for myself and a little business card. And I had a few small businesses in town that I knew about. And I like wrote a letter to them and this was back when you would do that. There wasn't.
You act like it was 50 years ago.
But I mean, it was a lot less like, oh, let's go on Facebook and find somebody. Sure. It was like, that wasn't a thing, right. And so like the hair salon I went to had a god-awful website, and I literally wrote my hairdresser a letter and put my rates in there and put my business card in there, and I mailed it to her. And the next time I went to get my hair done, I was like, hey, did you get that? And she was like, oh yeah, so let's talk about that.
That's good.
And so I started getting, it was all word of mouth, and I was not a salesperson.
No,
I hated it, but it was just kind of putting yourself out there.
That is such a good point, because you guys wouldn't know it from listening to the show, but Shannon is not a super, like, I wouldn't call you super outgoing. I think if anything, like you're a little shyer.
Right.
And the fact that you went out and did that to great effect, I think is such a, like, you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone to make this a successful business for you. But like, what a payoff, right?
Yeah. And asking people to network for you is really useful, right?
And that's all right to ask.
It's very
all
useful.
Right, especially if you're new and you're starting out. And we're going to kind of touch on this a little bit in a moment, but like asking for help is fine. Like you said, you found a woman who was established in your town, and you said, hey, I do this too. What can I do for you? Like, that is all right. Like, people like to help other people as long as you're, respectful and kind.
You know who else did? Melody Tholstrup. So we work with her a little bit here.
Guest.
She is a local marketing consultant.
She's our guest.
Oh, is she? Oh my gosh, perfect. Okay, so
Good.
when I was first trying to get my business off the ground, it was for my other my lifestyle goods business, and I was working at the Catalyst Center, which is it was the women's business center here at the time, and you could get some free consulting. And she happened to be the person that I was assigned to, and she was like, "Oh, this is so interesting. You do graphic design. I work with a lot of clients on marketing. I would love to introduce you to some of them." And she connected me with a few clients, and I actually ended up getting to work for the women's business center on a contract basis because of that, right? And so literally just putting yourself out there, telling people what you're doing, and you never know what kind of connections you're going to make. Yeah,
I think networking is such kind of like it almost seems like sleazy.
It sounds like, gross.
Let's go network. It seems very like disingenuous and usy. Yeah, but there's a very honest and earnest way to do it, where it's like, hey, I'm putting myself out there, and I'm asking you, like, what would you do? Do you have anybody? And people generally respond very well to that. You might get a couple of experiences where they're less than stellar, but don't let that deter you, because there are people out there who want to help you.
Absolutely.
And that flows very seamlessly into our next point, which is if you're just starting out, seek advice, right? Seek advice from people who have been there. I was just telling Shannon before we started recording that I get asked this a lot by kind of fledgling copywriters, because people, a lot of people in my circle know that I've copyrighted. Wow, I'm the best copywriter.
May I have a copyright, please?
Here's one copyrighted. Anyway, they know that I've copywritten for a long time, and so they always ask kind of the same questions, and I'm always kind of giving the same answers. So now I'm just going to give them this podcast. But yeah, like, people want to help you, and especially if there's people that are close to you. If you have a family member, if you have a friend, or like a family friend who has done it before or done something kind of tangential, or if it's something different. Like, even if, like, say Shannon and I didn't know each other but I knew she was a freelance designer, but I wanted to be a freelance writer, that's still relevant. I could still go to Shannon and say, hey, I want to freelance too. What advice can you give me? And again, like, people like to help. So I would say, ask the people that you know. Just like Shannon said earlier too, go online. There are a lot of forums and resources that will help you learn how to freelance, that has all this information we've really kind of covered today. And you can find it for specialties and for niches and for different kind of jobs. But LinkedIn and Facebook, and
ask people to coffee.
Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah,
I did that. I did that. I mean, I definitely did the online thing. It was before Facebook groups. God, I wish Facebook groups were a thing.
Yeah.
Back then, that would be great. Because now there's so many, and so many niche ones too, exactly. Which is amazing. But I have found a lot of value in-person things. And at the time, I was so young, and I think most people were like, yes. You would think that people would not want to meet. And there are some jerks out there that are like, I'm not going to fraternize with the competition, But I would ask people, I would be like, you've been doing this a long time. I would love to learn from you. How do you handle this one thing? Like, I don't understand what business license I'm supposed to have.
Right. How do I do my taxes?
Yeah, I don't understand. How do you manage your taxes? How do you find the time to do things? You know, and just meet up with people for coffee and ask them out, buy them a cup of coffee. And I would say 8 out of 10 times they're happy to do it.
Of course. And the key thing there is buy them a cup of coffee. You know, you're asking them for their time. It's a kindness, whether you take them to lunch or coffee, like cover the bill. Yeah. So maybe kind of factor that into your expenses if that's one thing that you're comfortable doing.
And definitely if you're going to do this, I would say do a lot more listening than badgering with questions.
That is a very good point. That is a very good point. Because I've met with a couple of younger kind of upstarts who are excited about it. And I've been pitched things. I've been told things. I've given advice only to have them say, well, I don't think that's a good idea. And I'm like, that's fine. But I'm telling you that this is how it works out there. So just kind of make sure that you have a bit of humility when you go out there. I'm not saying, you know, you can be confident, but at the same time, like you are there to listen to their wisdom. So
Absolutely.
Be respectful. I also really love Reddit as a resource.
Yes.
Reddit can be a cesspool, but it also has a lot of good specialty kind of subreddits that talk a lot about, there's one just straight up freelancing.
And you can find answers to really specific things on Reddit, which I really like. You can even just Google your question and then put Reddit on the end and it will pull up some really relevant threads.
Because the chances are that if you're asking a question, somebody else has asked it too and somebody else has answered it. So check out Reddit. You can also like meet new clients via these platforms. So just kind of be open to everything. And then our last piece of advice, I know this has been a long episode, but we've got a lot to say on the topic. My last piece of advice for freelancers or prospective freelancers, and this is the one that I really want you guys to hear, is to try it out before you commit.
Yes.
So if there's any way that you can freelance on the side while keeping your stable income, do that, right? Get some clients before you leave your job entirely. Like create your branding, get your portfolio squared away, talk to these people, network, do all that stuff on the side. So that way when you transition from a full-time job, and I'm saying full-time, that way when you transition into freelancing full-time, it's not this like culture shock, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills, what to expect thing, right? Like ease into it. And that way you're going to have a much better time. It's going to be much less stressful. Hopefully, ideally, when you do switch over to full-time freelancing, you have a couple of standing clients under your belt that you know are going to be steady money. So please do that.
I would say, try out the actual work itself. I would also say don't commit to massive like capital investments.
Yes.
So equipment or software or things like that. Like if there is a way for you to do, you know, a short term, like a trial on something or to borrow something or to get a used copy of something before you decide you're going to do this long term, because it could be very expensive for you to get the software, the computer, the vacuum, the whatever it is that you want to get. And then you decide you don't want to do it after a short time, then you're stuck with that investment and it never went anywhere, right? And so this was something that I did a lot. Like when I was starting out, I would go use the software at the library, you know? Like I couldn't afford the $2,000 design software at the time. It's a lot cheaper now, but like at the time that was it. Yeah. And I would use the one at the library for free for a while. Or, you know, I would, you know, go bum off my friend's, you know, computer or things like that, you know? So like say you want to get into doing photography on the side, don't go buy a $9 billion camera. Maybe find a used one or rent one.
Borrow somebody's.
Yeah. Or make it work with a cheaper one for a while.
I think that's great advice, because I think so many of us, we have this like glamorous, like I'm going to do this. And in order to do this well, I want to do the best, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to buy the best. And like really what we're doing there is we're building this fantasy. We're not actually doing the work.
Exactly.
So if you go out and buy that $9,000 camera and that $2,000 lens, like you might be saying, oh, $11,000, it's an investment because next year I'll be making $80,000 as a freelancer. Like that is irresponsible.
Yes.
I understand the appeal. I get it. I'm just saying that
if you really want a nice camera, just buy a nice camera, but don't buy a nice camera because of your business.
And delude yourself into thinking like this is going to be what makes me a good freelancer. Like no, self-discipline and, you know, planning and practicing and doing the work. And also there's a lot to be said for if you can do good work on a mediocre camera, man, you're going to do great work on a great camera, right? Absolutely. So like, let's go in steps. But again, and there's a lot of what they're called maker spaces kind of around here, where more and more these are cropping up in cities and towns, is that you can go, there's a library, right, for like you said, for computers. And our library has a 3D printer, which I think is cool.
I know, so cool.
Yeah, and like sewing machines. So yeah, community centers and libraries often have a lot of resources, but now there are specialized like businesses cropping up where you can pay a membership fee or get a daily pass and you can go use their equipment. Like we have one called Sanctuary in Huntsville. I can actually link it in the description. We did a video on them just so you guys have kind of an idea of what it is. But they have like a room full of 3D printers, and they have a room full of computers that are loaded up with like all the Adobe suites, which again, Shannon said, like that's expensive. That's a monthly fee that's really expensive. And the computer itself is expensive. And so maybe you don't have all that money to invest in a computer, but you can pay, $11 a month or, $5 a day or whatever it is to go and use their stuff. And yeah, I know it's not as luxurious as having your own in your house, but in order to save up for that luxurious computer, you use theirs.
Or consider trading services,
Yes,
like say
that's a great idea.
You can offer somebody this if they do something for you. And I think that is a really good way to save money up front.
Yeah, I agree. I also have a couple of freelance business tools that it's just a list. I'm not going to go over them here, but there's a lot of useful stuff in there. Like Calendly is a good one for managing your calendar. Stripe is a good one for invoicing.
Scannable is my favorite
Scannable
app for scanning documents.
Yeah, I use that one too.
Into a PDF.
Website blockers. So if you're somebody who maybe you struggle a little bit with self-discipline and you're like, it's really hard for me to not go on Facebook or whatever when I'm working, you can use Cold Turkey or Focus or Forest. Those are all blockers that will kind of not let you do anything but work. So anyway, you can check those out at the blog. Shannon did a really good segue earlier because we do have a really good guest.
That's amazing.
I know that was
I love Melody.
Melody Tholstrup. She is, why don't you introduce her?
Well, so Melody is I'm probably going to butcher this, but she is a local marketing consultant here in the Huntsville area. And she works with a lot of businesses on their marketing strategy and kind of getting out there in the community. And so I know she has run her own business for a long time and worked with a lot of freelancers. So I'm sure she has some good advice.
Yeah, guys, so stay tuned and we'll get back and be with Melody and Shannon. The Standard Office Procedures podcast is presented by Blue Summit Supplies. We're an online office supply store that puts you at the forefront of our focus by offering new career-building resources every single week. Sign up for our newsletter and visit our blog at bluesummitsupplies.com for free downloads, tools, and tips to make your job easier and more fun. All right, guys, so welcome back. As promised, I am here with Melody Tholstrup. Melody, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So I'm extra excited to have you here because oftentimes our guests are remote and you are here with us in the studio. And Melody is a local Huntsville marketer, but you're a lot more than that. Can you tell me a little bit about what it is you're doing?
Well, thank you. So I have had my own business as My Size Marketing for the last 10 years. And even within that 10 years, I've evolved what I am doing. But I've been in marketing, and especially in this market, for 30 years. And I started out in retail, ended up working in a couple of different ad agencies over the last 20 years, and worked also with AL.com when it was really starting to get going before it kind of took over, which is great. But one of the things I always did on the side for the last 15 years was to do volunteer work with the Catalyst, used to be called Women's Business Center, but coaching entrepreneurs. Well, that became such a joy for me that I kind of pivoted my business from being more like a mini agency to just being a coach and a guide, and helping people kind of learn how to do things themselves. So I teach a lot of workshops and, have spoken on podcasts and try to do, helpful things for people. I still do have clients that I kind of do some things for, but my goal is to empower a small business owner to know how to do it, who to turn to if they can't do it or don't have the time to do it, but just to really help them take their marketing to the next level, but have ownership in that.
And all of that is why, especially the word empower, is why I think you are the perfect guest for the topic we are covering today, which is how to start freelancing if you have no experience. And so Shannon and I earlier on the show, we really talked about kind of how to build up a portfolio and, where to go to find jobs and how to connect to communities. But I think that oftentimes the biggest impediment to starting freelancing is the fear of failure or the how do I even do it or what do I need to get started? So I would love to hear from you as somebody who has freelanced. I'm going to put air quotes around that because it's a lot more than that now. But I'm sure you've helped a ton of freelancers, start their own small businesses. What would you say if there were like a few kind of nuggets of wisdom to somebody who is ready to take the leap but not sure where to start? What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, I never wanted to start my own business, ever.
Gotcha.
And I was with an agency in the mid-2000s that closed after 30-something years. And I had clients, but no business because I was just, an Indian, not a chief. But what I did then, which is, again, I was working with the Catalyst as the Women's Business Center as a coach, but I went to them as a client and I said, hey, what do I need to do? And they said, you know what you're doing. You just need a good accountant or a good way to do your, bookkeeping. And so QuickBooks, I learned QuickBooks really fast. And luckily that was when it was going online. And so now everything's online. But get a good accountant, get some good mentors who will tell you like it is, but also encourage you. And I found that through the Catalyst and also through BNI and some local colleagues. But don't be afraid to ask questions. And if you see something on the internet, it doesn't make sense and you're Googling it, go to somebody local. Find somebody who's already been there, done that. Most business owners are giving and have been there, done that. So they're willing to share. So just never be afraid to ask for help or ask for guidance.
I love that you said that because we kind of brushed on those topics earlier, but not as in depth as I think we should have, because you said find a bookkeeper. So we talked about taxes, how that's going to be like a fresh new headache for those of us who have never had to deal with our own taxes in this realm before.
Right.
And finding a mentor. So I think that we've kind of touched on this on several different episodes of the show, how important a mentor can be. And I used to have this idea of I'd like a mentor, but how do I even find one? Where would I even start? And then it was kind of pointed out to me that I had several already. I had just never said, this is my mentor. It was like, Shannon's a great example. Shannon was my boss. And she also was my mentor. I just never realized it. And then my boss's boss was my mentor. So how would you kind of guide somebody who's like, I don't even know where to start? How do I find a mentor?
So again, at least in our market, we have such a supportive entrepreneur ecosystem. So you just pretty much have to just turn left and you're going to find somebody who can help you. But again, I always say go to the people who the SBA supports, which is like the small business development or the chambers or the Catalyst, places like that where that's what their money is for, is to help a small business grow. And then they're funding these people and programs that will help you because that's their job, to help a small business grow, thrive, and stay in business. So go there first, but then look around you to your industry. Like there's some great local organizations that I've been a part of for years, like PRCA for the marketing advertising, or women professional organizations. If you're a woman-owned business, we did some stuff with the Catalyst for mompreneurs. If you're a mompreneur, and of course, there's tons of Facebook groups for things like that too. But find somebody who's already been there, done that in your industry and in your market. I had somebody that I met through BNI, which is a local networking program in all over the world now. But I had people who were in different industries, but they'd also been there starting a business. And so I helped them with marketing and they helped me look at everything else that I, didn't know how to do. So just finding people who've already paved that road, don't recreate the wheel.
Yeah. And I love what you said a moment ago about, you mentioned all these groups, these places these groups that you've gone and really clicked into to make these connections. And I think that, those are really underutilized, especially in younger people, I think that we think, I don't want to join that. That seems like it's stuffy or boring or whatever our preconceived notions are. And I've joined NAPRCA, which again is the North Alabama Public Relations Council. Okay. And it was great. I mean, I met a lot of people through there that now I still kind of keep in touch with, and professionally, maybe they didn't quote unquote, really help me in my career necessarily, but when I go to events, I see them and I'm comfortable speaking to them, and then these sort of organic relationships develop. So I think if you haven't explored the local groups that are at your fingertips, at your disposal, that's a great place to start, right? And even just going and being present. You don't have to go and find that mentor the first day.
Right.
Just go and connect with people.
Yeah. And so there's things like mastermind groups and, things that people are starting, organically, or sometimes you pay. But I mean, I've been doing marketing since before the internet. So, we didn't have social media to connect us to each other. So what I did find, and I think you find the hard way in life, is the more involved you get, the more you get out of it, right? So if you join a group and you just go to maybe a meeting every so often, you're going to get some content. You may meet a new person. But if you go and get on a committee, become part of a project, stick your neck out a little bit, to make it out of your comfort zone, before you know it, you've got friends for life who you've done some stuff with. And now you're like, hey, I can turn to them for a referral, or I can turn to them for a recommendation, or I can give them business. I mean, because this is a small area, most places are. When you've been in one industry, people much kind of circle around to each job in that industry. So.
And then the last point you made was about asking for help, right? Which I know kind of dovetails in with the mentor, piece, but at the same time, just having that humility to say, hey, can you tell me how to do this? What would you tell somebody who maybe they're like, I'm shy, I don't know where to start? How, you make it sound so easy. How would you guide them?
So again, there's so many tools on the internet, free. Go to YouTube. Like you could just spend a day on YouTube watching videos on how to do something in your, either as an entrepreneur or in your industry, or just how to, do Google Words, or, you could spend time just self-teaching yourself, but it's really, go to a workshop or attend a, webinar where you actually maybe can engage with either an instructor or people in there. Get some conversation. Be someplace where you can ask a question and not feel uncomfortable. Again, that's what the SBA and all the programs that they support in every market is there for. They're like, please come, we want to help you. They're getting tons of funding to help small business owners. I teach a class at the Catalyst, and I'm not the only teacher, but we have one coming up this Friday. It's a free class, 11 to 1 on Zoom. We have people now that we've had all over the world that have set in on this class. And basically, it's a journey of a new business owner. It's called Engage in Entrepreneurship. People come on there for Zoom. They don't know, some of them don't even know the name of the business or what they're going to do. They just want to start a business. And then some have been established. What we do is we literally walk you through from how to set a mission statement and your client target customer to here's some things that you can do to create revenue, or how do you achieve, how do you get over obstacles? We cover that in 2 hours. By the end of it, we're sharing, everybody's sharing about where they are and what they're doing. Every single time, people have made some kind of connection. You see people posting in the chat, in the Zoom chat, hey, here's my email, call me, I want to see you after, And I've seen that when we used to have them live too, people would connect. So I have a story. One time we had 2 gentlemen, very different backgrounds, and they were in there to learn about starting a business. They both were looking to start agroponic fish farms.
What?
One was from like Brazil. One was from, small town in Alabama. After the meeting, they were like, oh my gosh, let's talk about resources. But that's the thing. Until you ask and kind of take that one step out and just go to that meeting or, ask those questions or make that appointment with that free coach that they have, there's so much you can't, just open that door. Just open that door and step through it.
Yeah. And I feel like, for those of us listening who maybe aren't in the Huntsville area, there's everything that you've just said is applicable. Go on to Google, find your chapters of whatever. Just Google small business associations, entrepreneur groups, whatever, networking events. If you are in Huntsville, though, Catalyst is a great resource, right?
Yeah. Well, and anything that, if you go to SBA website, sba.gov, and you look up your area, they're probably going to have a list of all their connected organizations, and also any chamber. That's their job too. You may not have to join a chamber right away as a new business owner to get some of the benefits, or at least go to some of their programs and classes. I've taught some free classes on Zoom for the Huntsville Chamber. You pay nothing as a member to take the class, and you pay maybe $5 or $10 to take it if you're not a member. So you just have to look. There's resources, and it's worth taking that step and going through that door.
By chamber, you mean Chamber of Commerce, right?
Exactly.
And so I think that to a lot of us, especially, I know when I started freelancing, I must have been like 19 years old. And the idea of Chamber of Commerce, that was such a scary, fish. I was like, oh, they're not going to want me in there.
Right.
I've been to Chamber of Commerce meetings. Like, it's just a bunch of randos, like they're all incredibly smart and they're all business owners, are generally, right? Like, but you are welcome there, most likely. Conduct yourself professionally. Don't be a fool. Don't show up in a t-shirt and jeans. But I would say, like, you are welcome at the chamber. So these things sound scary. These things sound, quote unquote, like, highfalutin or whatever. But this is what they're there for, is for you to come, and they're resources for people who are curious about these things.
Well, especially now that everything is virtual.
That's exactly right.
Because I was saying, if you have a question and they have a free workshop, you don't even have to put your face on camera.
You don't have to put on pants.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't have to
put on like a nice collared shirt. Nope, do your thing. Right. But no, I think that's a great point. Melody, I wanted to ask you too. So I love this question sometimes, and I think that you'd be a great one for it. If you had one piece of advice for like baby Melody just starting out in her entrepreneur career, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one, because like I said, I did not want to do this.
Which I think is so interesting, because I don't want to embarrass you, but I've heard your name a million times. You're kind of like the go-to person for marketing locally. No, I think like everyone knows who you are, and you're such an institution in the area that for you to say like, I didn't even want to do this, I'm like, what?
Well, that's because there's a bigger plan than what I had in mind, obviously. Sure. But I think, again, my goal always, when I got out of college with a theater and English degree and didn't know what I wanted to do next. But it paid my way through school. Yeah. So, but I knew that I just wanted to help people. I love people. My dad was in sales insurance and he loved helping people. My mom was a teacher. She loved helping people. So I was like, as long as I find a job where I get to talk to people, maybe wear a nice outfit and help people. That's why I liked retail for a while. That's why I loved advertising because it was always new and different. But again, and I tell new business owners, if it's not about you, right? If your business is going to provide a value or provide a solution for someone's problem in the marketplace, you're going to love what you do. And as long as you're providing value in the world, you're there for a reason. You're going to love what you do, and whether you're working for someone or whether you're doing it on your own. So that's kind of now that I'm in my mid 50s and I have kids that are almost 20 something. I said, listen, I want you to make a living. Obviously, you don't want to live at home forever, but just find something you do love at least 70% of it. Whether you're the owner of it or you're working for someone else. But as long as you're providing value for the world and helping the world be a better place, whether it's in small ways or big ways, you're going to love what you do and you'll be fine.
I love the 70% number because I do feel like there's something almost unrealistic about like, oh, just find what you do and monetize it, right? Like for a lot of us, like I love to write. I want to write fiction. That's very hard to monetize, right? Like that's difficult. But you're right. Where I found this job, which has led into another completely different job, but I was writing copy for, this company, different companies. And so I was writing and it wasn't fiction, but I sure did love writing. And then I found out that I loved communicating. And then I found out that I loved connecting with people. And then it sort of led into lots of things. But 70% is such a good magic number because I think if we have this idealized version of like, well, if I just can, monetize whatever I love doing 100%, like it's going to be tough. But 70% is pretty dang good. Right?
Oh, yeah. Well, because even if you love your business and you're a business owner, there's that 30% of admin
still gotta do taxes.
And pay taxes and all that stuff. And I don't love that. But if I get people to help me do it right, or tools or resources or whatever, then I get to do that 70%.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if I work for somebody else, they're going to have me do stuff I don't necessarily want to do. But if the mission is there and I love the mission, then I'm worried that 30% is not going to be that hard.
I love that advice. Melody, thank you so much for coming on the show. I feel like you have so much more knowledge that I want to pour into our listeners' ears. So I'd love to have you back sometime if you're willing.
Oh, sure. I like to chat.
Perfect. Guys, I want to tell you guys I put her on the spot. She didn't know I was going to ask that. So I appreciate you saying yes. But thank you so much for coming. And guys, we'll be back next week. This has been a Blue Summit Supplies production. Good job, Larry.